So today I'm going to talk to the brilliant author and old friend Clover Stroud about her most recent book, being launched in March, The Red of My Blood. A life and death story. It's a reflective account of the first year after her sister Nell's death from breast cancer. Nell Gifford, many of you will know, who was the creator and magic behind Gifford Circus. Thanks, Clover, for chatting today.
Well, thank you for coming over. And
it's lovely to see you again after ages. What made you decide to write this book?
So I had just finished my second book. I mean, I've been a journalist for 20 years. And I just finished my second book, My Wild and Sleepless Nights, and then Nell died very, very suddenly. She had breast cancer, but 10 days before she died, she'd been given a prognosis of another 5, maybe even 10 years. So we were all feeling very, very optimistic and very positive. And then she got sudden liver failure, and she was basically given a day to live. You know, she died her death was incredibly shocking, and she died in hospital in Gloucester. And I went into a place of like deep grief and deep shock and disbelief. But I'm also a writer, and I was aware that what I was experiencing, the feelings of grief and the feelings of her death, were very extraordinary, and I felt as though I kind of at times, especially in the first few months, I felt as if I was almost going to die from the pain of losing Nell, and I was and the pain felt kind of unbearable, and it felt beyond words. But I also felt as though, you know, my senses were really, really alive, and although it was excruciatingly painful, I was very interested by what was actually happening to me. And I was interested by, how do you survive the death of somebody you really love, you know? And I remember looking around at people who've had similar losses and thinking, well, how are they doing it? You know, I remember looking at Nigella Lawson, thinking, she looks like a woman who's got a great deal of joy in her life. She's living a really, you know, vivid life, yet she's, you know, I think her mother and her sister and her husband had all died of cancer. So it's kind of like studying people, thinking, how are they doing it? Because I don't feel as though I can walk today because of the pain. So I wanted to start writing about what was happening to me and about the process. And my writing is incredibly I have a forensic interest in the way that we feel and what we feel. And I know I have an ability to kind of express emotion. And I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, so I'm familiar with it as well. It's a very familiar place, and a lot of loss. And so it was a desire to kind of honour Nell and record what was happening, and maybe to connect with other people as well. And also, I think that thing of connecting with other people is important to kind of, maybe I could write something that would help other people at some point as well, definitely, to navigate that kind of unbearably painful time. So that's the place the book came from.
Okay, and how would you say it differs from a grief memoir?
There are so many grief memoirs at the moment, and when I was talking to my editor about what I wanted to write, I said I want this to be a book about life. You know, it is a book about death, and it's a book about the experience of having literally stood in the room in Gloucester Hospital with Nell as death came in and took her away. And I was very aware of that kind of presence of death actually being with us. And I remember being in the hospital corridor when the doctor said to me, you know, she's got a day to live, and feeling as though I was standing in the path of a bull galloping towards me, or a train thundering, and going, Stop! You know, this isn't supposed to be happening now. We thought this was going to happen at some point, but we were going to be not now. This shouldn't be happening now. But that feeling of like, you cannot do anything but accept it. There's nothing you can do. So I wanted to write about death and how it changes us, and when we're in its kind of solemn, majestic presence, because it is majestic. then how we're changed by that. And I feel as though my life is kind of more alive. It's gone through excruciating pain, and I go through excruciating pain still in missing Nell. And actually, even talking to you now about it, I feel like it's there. But also, in order to survive that pain, I think we sort of I know that my life cracked open, like when you find the crystals inside a rock, and something kind of extraordinary happens, that you do survive, and you do. Maybe this is an opportunity to I always think about Meghan Markle when I say this, but not just survive, but thrive.
But thrive.
Yeah.
Yes.
And to actually live a bolder, more brilliantly coloured, life with which is more vivid. And that is the opportunity, I suppose, that Nell's death has given me, perhaps slightly living for her, for the times that she's lost as well. So I hope it's kind of like inspiring about living, and it's not just grief. A lot of grief memoirs have like an outline of grey leaves on the cover. They're very sort of muted, and I almost like wanted to call it not another fucking grief memoir. Yeah. It's not that. It is a book about life and survival and creativity.
Yes.
And so I think that's possibly how it differs in some way. This kind of vivid feeling of it.
Yeah. And Claire, how did you go about structuring your book?
I started writing in the summer of 2020, and I went to stay with the Gifford family in Frampton-upon-Severn, and they had been really good friends with Nell, and I was staying in their beautiful house, and there was nobody staying in the main house, so I was in this incredible house on my own. It was 4 absolutely bakingly hot days.
So hot that summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I didn't really know where the book was going to go. I mean, I had a kind of outline, and I thought, well, I'll do one chapter about how we deal with people's stuff, and one about doing a funeral, and one about the 6 months. But this writing came out of me that was much more poetic and much more kind of vivid than plodding through certain stages, and I felt as though the kind of poetry and a kind of art was coming out of me, I suppose, which I hadn't. I kind of touched on it in my Wild and Sleepless Nights and The Wild Other, but it was taking me further, and I just knew that what I needed to do was basically document the extreme feelings of that year, and I was pretty sure that it was going to be over the course of a year, and I knew there were certain right sort of rituals and things we have to do, like sorting out somebody's house, or going to the grave, or dealing with the kind of further edges of loss when you've sort of got used to the fact that or how do you get used to the fact that person's not there? Can you communicate with them? And that's what I'm sort of dealing with in the book, is like, where are you? Can I communicate with you? Can I still have a relationship with you? What's happened? And obviously none of us actually have the answer to any of those, where somebody's gone. We don't know. But that's what I was kind of trying to grapple with in some way or another.
And did you find it very harrowing at times?
Yeah, I mean, I found it, in order to write as I do, I have to re-feel everything again. And so when I write, I go into a very intense place. And there are some bits where you just have to, you're just writing about days. And there's funny bits when I'm in the house here and the children are oblivious to my grief, and they're like throwing, shoes down
Stuff
the stairs.
at each other.
Having a spitting competition.
Yes.
But at the same time, I was in this place of this kind of vortex of pain and loss. And it was harrowing. And the weird thing was that I was writing it during lockdown as well. So the kids I've got 5 children, they were all here. And, we were all living in a very strange place of extremities at that time, weren't we? And it was kind of an extraordinary, beautiful, but sometimes extremely painful experience as well.
No, I bet. Is that a phone ringing or an alarm?
That's my phone ringing. It's fine. I can just ignore it.
Nice background music for everybody. So I've just finished reading your book, and I have to say I cried a lot. I think it was a combination of having known both of you well, you know, when we were children, which made it all the more heartbreaking. And also the fact that it unearthed many sort of deep and hidden thoughts that I had when my father died a few years ago, which I'd never have even entertained sharing with others, as I felt, well, I couldn't really understand them, and so therefore nobody else is going to be able to understand them. But I found it like sort of therapy, really, reading your book. Do you think that people who read your book, who haven't been down that sort of long and lonely road of grief, would be affected in the same intense way that somebody, you know, who hasn't ever experienced intense grief?
I mean, because it is such a kind of singular physiological experience until you've really been through it. You kind of don't know. I remember when Mum died, feeling as if I was kind of walking around on space, on the moon, and like the ground felt uneven, and that sort of the way you physically are affected by it as well. What I'm really hoping is that the book will enable people to understand a bit more about what happens when you lose somebody and when somebody dies, and the as you say, very lonely place that you go into. I hope that because of the way that I write, and it's, you know, it's not complicated, my writing.
No,
I describe emotions in a very visual way often, so that you can hopefully, because when I'm writing it, I sometimes I wrote about pain as like a little gold dagger going in my throat at a certain. You can really. I'm hoping that the reader will kind of be able to
you can
see
really
it.
feel it. You can feel it, and the way you write, it's so beautiful. The way you use colours and, you know.
Yeah, I hope that makes it really brings it alive for people, and hopefully it would enable people to feel more connected or more empathetic to people who are going through something like that. And one of the reasons as well that I wrote it was because people often say this, after Nell died, a lot of people said, and it's meant in a very kind, good-hearted way, I can't begin to imagine what you're going through. I can't begin to imagine what it must be like to lose my sister. And that actually makes you feel more lonely, doesn't it? It makes you feel like, so the place that I'm in is inexplicably...
It's like, well, we're there and got to deal with it. There's no choice.
And me and Nell used to talk about, because our mum had this terrible riding accident when we were in our teens that left her profoundly brain damaged, and people often used to say, I can't imagine what that's like. And actually I do understand that, because what happened to Mum was pretty weird, because she was left in this incredibly damaged state for 22 years. So Nell and I had walked through a high level of kind of trauma together, and that's part of the thing that I write about, is this sense of like, who do I share these memories with now? What if I forget the memories of our childhood? Does that mean it didn't exist? And
it's the fear, isn't it?
I'm
just sort of terrified of not being able to hear their voice or so remember stuff.
I hope that it would help. I hope that it would help people as well who haven't been, haven't grieved, haven't lost, because what is also certain is that we obviously will also all go through it.
Everyone's going to at some point, aren't they?
It's the only inevitability, but we're weirdly kind of loath to talk about it, and we're scared of talking about it. We're scared of feeling it, I think. And I'm really interested, and I'm really pleased that you said that it helped you to feel things, because somebody else, a friend of mine whose mother died about 6 years ago, read it, and she said, in reading The Red of My Blood, I'm feeling things that I didn't understand. I didn't have words for. And it's helping me to kind of process them.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love that feeling of being able to connect with people in that way.
No, it really is. I think it's really good for one, actually. Makes you address stuff that perhaps you've, I don't know, buried under the carpet.
Yeah.
Definitely. And do you think, I don't know, have you reread your book? Do you think, or do you have a problem with, and I don't know, do you think you could reread your book, or do you think it would take you down that, back into that dark forest you talk about?
The forest, yeah. I use a metaphor as like going into the forest, because that's what does happen when somebody dies. You go into a very bleak, scary place of just walking around the kitchen, filling up the dishwasher, taking the kids to school. All those things become very difficult things to navigate. And I mean, I have reread the book because I actually read the audio. So I had to reread the whole thing in 4 days. And it was and obviously when I'm in the writing of it, the editing, you know, I've had to reread it
so you're probably used
times. But doing the audio was quite extraordinary because I was in this little studio and hearing your own words in your head about this very...
It was tough.
It was very difficult. But luckily I had an amazing producer who really helped me through it. And I mean, when I read it again, I actually feel really proud of it. I feel really proud of it as a book. It's
beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
It really is. It really is. So, tell us a bit about why you write so confessionally.
I started writing in my mid-20s, and I started out as a journalist, and I was writing a lot for the Telegraph and the Sunday Times and the Mail, and actually for everybody. I mean, I was freelance. I've always been freelance, so I write for anybody. And I was going through things, partly because of what had happened to Mum, this strange experience I'd had. I was asked to write about that quite a lot, of living with a mother who had really bad brain damage and what that was like. I had children in my 20s, just kind of straight after finishing at Oxford, and so the Telegraph wanted me to write about what's it like being a graduate who's just got a newborn baby. There's lots of things that I was writing about, and then I realised that people like reading this, and I like writing it as well, and that I could connect to people. And I wrote about I was married to a guy who was an alcoholic, so I wrote about addiction and dealing with that within a marriage. I wrote about single motherhood. I wrote funny pieces about having male au pairs, or going off and interviewing the SAS, just anything. You know, I was, and that I suppose helped me to develop my voice. And then I wrote The Wild Other, which is about Mum's accident. And in order to really express what I'd been through, the only way that I could do it was to be completely honest about everything. And I know that when I read memoir, I want to know what the writer's really going through.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel as though, I mean, I read a very good book. I'm not going to say what it's called, because she's a very good writer and I'm not criticising her for it, but there was one detail. It was about her splitting up with her husband, and then at one point she mentioned in one page that she had another boyfriend, and I thought, I've just read this whole book about you splitting up with your husband. That seems like quite an important detail of it.
Key detail. Perhaps it might have influenced
the
outcome.
That did influence me. I thought, you have to be honest. And also, what I'm talking about, you know, The Wild Other, a lot of that is about growing up, travelling, drug taking, marriage, sex, lust, violence, self-hatred, grief. All of these things are things that we all experience. And I love the kind of liberation of just writing totally honestly about your life, because you know, I write about sex very openly, and in the same way that talking about death, it kind of shocks people, but it's like grief, like death, it is also the other thing that ever is happening. And actually I love it when you get, quite often it's quite elderly ladies come up to me and say,
what do they say?
Really enjoyed your book, lots of sex in it.
Bet they love that.
They loved it. Yeah, they were saying it in a kind of, really enjoyed it. So I find there's something incredibly, and also I'm not, you know, I write about so I wrote my second book, My Wild and Sleepless Nights, is about motherhood. I've written about my 5 kids. My eldest was getting expelled at the same time that I had a newborn baby.
Gosh, that must have been tough.
And I was writing about that experience because I could see what he was going through, and I felt what he's going through is just like a normal teenage boy. And I kind of wanted to get rid of some of the stigma of the idea of like smoking weed or whatever. There was a problem with it, and that he was doing something incredibly wrong. And I know that in my writing, I'm not like settling scores. I'm not really going into the details of other people's lives.
No,
I talk
totally
about
yours.
my own experience. So my motherhood book my children are in it, but it's not like a series of anecdotes about my children.
No.
It's about what it feels like to be a mother, and what it feels like to deal with an adolescent and a baby at the same time. And so I hope that anybody who does appear in any of the books, they would never feel as though I had, I've been quite discreet about anything.
So discreet, because it's all about what you're feeling and your take on it all, isn't it, really?
And that's what, when I was writing The Red in My Blood, I thought, well, I'm writing about what it was like for me. I haven't written about my siblings, I haven't written about Nell's children, I've written about what it feels like. And I didn't even really use Nell's name until the end of the book, because I wanted somebody to read this thinking, this could be, this is what I felt like when my father died, or my sister, or my brother, or my friend. It's not like a story about Nell Gifford at all.
No.
It's a story about a very, very universal story, and I hope that is a way of connecting to people. And I hope by talking honestly, it does kind of liberate other people to feel this stuff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I get on my Instagram, I get lots of amazing messages from people saying, you pulled me out of 2 years of postnatal depression. Or somebody messaged me the other day saying, I had sex with my husband for the first time in a year after reading your book, or I understand, my feelings towards my mother, or and that's a. I mean, I'm fascinated.
It's a really powerful thing,
and I'm fascinated by us as normal people. Our individual experiences. I'm not very interested in celebrity or wealth or what I'm interested in why we feel things and how that makes us human, and the mistakes we make, why marriages fail, how to be a good mother or a bad mother, or what makes a good mother, what does death feel like, and those kind of stories of normal life, I suppose, are the substance of life, aren't they?
It's just that it's so human.
Yeah.
It's just so human.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, I mean, we sort of covered this. Would you say, I think this would help others who need to heal and learn to live with grief. I think it.
Yeah,
it does,
I
it
really,
does,
really
would help.
I hope that the book. In fact, there's a couple of friends who, since I've written it, somebody close to them have died, and I've really wanted them to read it, because that was also another reason why I wanted to write it. Was when, after Nell had died, I was looking for something to read to kind of help me through it. And obviously, Joan Didion, A Year of Magical Thinking, that's the big grief memoir that people point you towards, or C.S. Lewis. And there's obviously poetry and novels and various things, but I couldn't find a really kind of contemporary take on what this experience feels like.
Rolled into one, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I hope that I hope that it would give, if somebody had recently lost somebody they really loved, I hope if they read it, it might be a kind of, not exactly a map, but like a version of...
Just think, well, it's okay to feel
it's
this,
okay,
and
definitely.
it's normal.
Yeah, definitely. And that there is I use this metaphor of the forest, and I use a kind of images of Arthurian knights.
Yes.
Riding, because I love horses and grew up with horses and grew up riding with you,
Yes.
obviously, as well. And, for me, there's a kind of an incredible, timeless, heroic power of a horse, basically. Yeah. And so I use this image of riding through the forest and these Arthurian knights, and they were kind of riding beside me and getting me on, through the forest, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I suppose for somebody else that might be that's in a way just, I think it's finding the thing that helps you as well, whether it's exercise or whether it's creativity or cooking or going and riding your horse or meeting up with friends, whatever that thing is that you really, really love doing, going skiing, playing tennis, all those things, or it could be sewing, it could be creating something with your children. I think that it's it's finding something that you can sort of latch your sadness around in a way, I suppose. And for me, writing has been a massive part of that and the way through, and being outside and You know, I live near the Ridgeway, spending time on the Ridgeway, all that.
I know, it must be
really
lovely.
Important.
Actually, I really want to go up there again. I haven't been up there since I was about 7.
Oh, it's amazing. You should
Or
go
something.
up.
No,
You
I
should go
will.
up to the White, up into
Yeah,
White Horse.
no,
when you leave.
definitely. So obviously in your book you cover your relationship with Nell and so many times spent together. Do you have any particular memory that really defines your, I suppose, your relationship with Nell that sort of, you know, sticks out? So
Nell and I were the youngest of 5 children, and there was an age gap with our elder siblings. We got a different father, so Nell and I felt like, which we were, it was the 2 younger ones, and we grew up, you know, quite near Cirencester in a village called Minety, and had a very beautiful. It was very beautiful. Our childhood. It was very kind of quite ramshackle and bohemian. I don't really like the word bohemian, but it was quite ramshackle and kind of homemade and I have very strong memories of being a young child and being outside with Nell and with our ponies, and kind of a feeling of being, I mean, it sounds romantic because it was romantic, but like the feeling of sort of barefoot in the grass and going out in the early morning and walking going, you know, running across the lawn in the same way that my kids do now, actually. And then after Mum had her accident, Nell and I were living in our family home, and our elder siblings had left home. It was very weird because Mum was. It was so weird because Mum was in hospital for ages, and then when she came home, she was very, very, very brain damaged and had a nurse living with her, and various people trying to look after her. But Nell and I, so we were like these 2 traumatized teenage girls, but we also were living in this house with complete freedom, and my dad was working in London, so it was a weird kind of sense of like something horrific had happened,
yes,
but we had total freedom. It was like a kind of teenage fantasy of freedom.
Yes.
So I really do, those years of mid to late adolescence of being with Nell and being around the horses and raving and the kind of freedom of and weird breaking apart of life in the 90s feels like a very sort of strong part
no,
of
I'm sure.
But then also when my now 18 and 21-year-old were babies, I split up from my husband, so I was in my mid-20s, I had Jimmy and Dolly, who were a baby and a toddler. Spent loads and loads of time with Nell then, and she was incredible. She was amazing. She was amazing. We spent lots and lots of time at her house or with the circus. I went on the road with the circus and did like a backstage cafe, and it was really, really fun. It was very kind of flung together, and she was really lovely with Jimmy and Dolly, and was always really, really close to them.
Sweet.
So there are so many.
You know,
she's
sure,
sort of
so
woven.
many. I remember you 2 loads. Sort of, I remember coming back from hunting one day, and us all arguing who was going to have to get off and open and shut the gates. I just remember it really, really, really well. Everyone getting cross and sort of Nell storming off on her. I think you had a grey.
Yeah, we had lots
and
of
Nell
greys.
had a grey as well.
Yeah. I think that as kids, that thing of being on ponies and being made to be outside. I mean, what I'm always trying to do with my children now.
And me, get them outside, and they don't want to.
But it gives you a kind of bravery and resilience, definitely, and an ability to cope with things. I mean, horses are a massive part of my life. We were talking about this earlier. Every time I've tried to go away from them, I find myself going back to them.
Yeah, being drawn back.
Yeah, and now I have like, you know, I have cobs and kind of gypsy ponies, all quite scruffy, but I absolutely love the feeling of being around horses. And they're really, you know, Mum loved riding, and her accident was a riding accident. People often say, well, why have you continued riding when they've caused this massive accident? But
I know
they're sort of in a way, her accident made me ride more. You know, it made me go off to Texas and ride in rodeos and ride around bits of Russia with criminals and do more extreme riding, basically. And Nell, definitely, horses were at the heart of her kind of sensibility as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what do you think Nell would think about you writing this book?
Rick, my dad, Rick, and I were talking about this and laughing because Nell was really, I think it's really important as well to be really clear-eyed and really honest and open about things. And Nell was a major diva. She was a major person. She was a majorly big personality. She was an artist. She was an incredibly creative person, and she lived for her creativity. With every fibre of her being, she was living her creativity. And like a intensely creative person, the thing that she was interested was what she was creating. So that did always, from when we were really young children, actually, her art and what she was making kind of dominated a lot of our conversations, and we used to fight about that. And I've just been writing an article actually about the way that I fought with her and the kind of violence of the way that I fought with her, and that you can fight like that because I'd never fight with a friend like that because you would just walk away from the friendship basically. Yeah. You can kind of fight like that because you're sisters, and we used to have these blazing rows, and then we'd get it all out, and then a couple of days later we'd
blows over.
Do you want to meet up with the ponies or something like that, or should we go to Cirencester and have lunch?
That's what it is, isn't it, though, between sisters, brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
my
definitely.
Children, they can have
you
the
can
most
see it with your own children.
Arguments and cat fights.
Yeah,
and then sort of half an hour later, they're the best of friends
it's
again.
Gone. Yeah,
but it just blows over like a sort of storm.
Yeah. No, definitely. So we had a tempestuous relationship, and I was quite often quite angry with her because I felt like she wasn't really seeing what I was doing, especially when I started writing books. I really wanted her to acknowledge the wild other, and I think she was in her own way. But when she was dying, literally one of the last things she said to me was, write a book about this. So I she didn't specify what kind of book.
No.
But I think
she'd be so proud.
I think she would be pleased.
She would.
And also, I love writing about her. I love writing about her on my Instagram. I love talking about her. I love remembering how maddening she could be. I love remembering how amazing and affectionate and sweet, and what a laugh we had,
Yes.
Pete, my husband, said, like, I've never seen two people who row as much as you two do, but like the way that you connect, when you connect, you are
love
somebody.
And laugh.
Yeah,
Just...
like you are a kind of a unique version of you when you're with her, and I really miss that so much.
I bet you do.
But I think that she would be, because she believed in creativity so much, and because with this book I have really taken my writing to a new place, and I'm incredibly proud of it. I think she would be really proud of it. I think she would. Yeah, definitely.
So, how involved are you now with the Gifford Circus?
Well, it's been, to be honest with you, it's been completely heartbreaking, because the circus was a beautiful place where I grew up. Well, my children grew up. In a sense, I suppose I did, in a way, because I was in my 20s, and there was that big, I was in, we were kind of going through the formation of it together. It was formed in the year 2000. So all that bit through our 20s and 30s, when you are kind of forming a family and working out who you are as a person, a lot of that happened at the circus, and it was a really beautiful place to be. And Nell talked to me about it a lot, and a lot of the images from it. And actually, literally, a lot of the kind of props and costumes and things were taken from our childhood. And I think there's that quote that often gets used about the circus. She held a diamond up to her childhood, and Gifford Circus was from it. So there's a lot of the images in it which are like very, very strongly part of mine and Nell's childhood. And I always felt that I would go to the circus and be able to find her there and be present to her there. And she, what's been tragic and very, very difficult for myself and now her sort of closest family, my dad and my stepmother, is that she left a very clear letter of wishes about 3 people that she wanted, who she'd worked with for a long time, who are great circus stars, who are brilliant artists, very kind of able, intelligent people, that she wanted them to be part of the long-term vision of the circus, and she wanted them to be honoured in a certain way. And she wanted a creative director to be part of the circus too. And unfortunately, the circus has been taken over by her accountant, who refuses to enact these very simple wishes, and he is a sort of self-appointed CEO, an MD, and so I feel totally heartbroken about it. It's been
sure you do.
Absolutely awful, and seeing her,
For you.
seeing these very kind of clear wishes, which are not a complicated thing to do, and they would only enhance the circus, and they're part of her artistic legacy. Seeing those ignored and stood in the way by a man, there's something quite gutting about that as well, because Nell was, I grew up in a very matriarchal family with a lot of very, very strong women, and Nell definitely wanted to honour women as well, and she wanted certain women around in this sort of legacy. And I worry about, there are a lot of wonderful people involved in the circus who are working very hard, but that those wishes have been ignored, and I worry that her creative legacy will be lost. So it's been
very sad.
It's been incredibly sad and incredibly hard, and
bet.
Like a kind of another loss of her.
Yes,
in
I'm
a
sure.
strange way. Yeah, it's been very, very, very difficult.
Well, I really hope it gets. Well, I don't know quite how it will.
How it will get. I don't know.
Sorted out.
I have nothing to gain from it.
But it's for Nell.
It's for Nell. Yeah, it's her. I don't like seeing her, hearing her voice silenced.
Yes.
Of this, and she trusted. I'm a trustee.
Yes.
And she entrusted us to carry this out.
Yeah.
And I've been completely thwarted and completely blocked. And I've tried very, very hard, and it's been awful.
I bet it's been really, really tough for you.
Totally awful.
Yeah. Oh dear.
But who knows?
Who knows
what the future holds?
Hopefully
anyway.
they'll see sense. Well. So anyway, moving on though, what is next?
What's next? I'm writing another book. In fact, I've just signed for 3 more books, and
wow.
I love writing. I don't know if you can call it memoir, narrative nonfiction, or life writing. I'm always interested in kind of looking at, whether it's motherhood or grief or marriage or whatever. I'm interested in looking at life, as I was saying. And so I'm writing. I've just started a new book which has got to be finished by next March. I'm excited about where it's going. I can't talk too much about what it's about right now, but it's more kind of life writing and my examination of a certain aspect of life. And then there's another one after that, and then there's something slightly different as well coming out between them. So there's basically lots more writing. I want to start a podcast as well. I do these Instagram live. I do a live every Friday on my Instagram talking, which I started in lockdown, starting with talking to a different writer every week. So I love.
I must tune into that. You're doing one this Friday.
I will be doing one this Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I usually do them every Friday in the morning, and that was just was basically because when My Wild and Sleepless Nights came out, lockdown happened a week later, so all the literary, obviously every event was cancelled.
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, well, I'll start talking to writers on Instagram, and that's been a really nice way of in this strange time when we haven't seen a lot of people,
keeping connected
with people, and having conversation about creativity. I mean, I do feel as though, I do feel that with the kind of thing that I've gained from these last 2 incredibly painful years is a stronger sense of who I am as a writer and what I can create and how I can communicate and what that brings to the rest of your life as well, how it enhances all aspects of your life. So it's like an incredibly hard
good
one.
Positive to come out of something hugely devastating.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chloe, so much.
It's been lovely talking to you.
Well, it's been great talking to you too. That's absolutely brilliant, and I'm really enjoying The Wild Other.
Great.
I'm not very far through it, but I fully recommend everyone to get reading these books and hurry up with your next one, because I'm going to be very upset when I finish The Wild Other.
Well, it's just so lovely knowing that the books connect with people and knowing
they really do.
that they kind of make people feel stuff. I
Yeah,
love that. I
it
love
really
that.
does.
I can make people feel stuff
It's
through the way I
amazing.
write.
You're magic. Thank you so much,
Thank
Clover.
you, Panda. It's been
Okay.
great.